let's finish this. Let's finish the Channel 4 thing, and then we'll talk about
starving children, dangerously malnourished. Amputations performed without anaesthetic.
Yeah, remember, it's important to also remember why Benjamin Netanyahu is considered a war criminal now, and so is Yoav Gallant, and so is many members of the Israeli occupying forces, and many people who have offered them credence, offered them protection, offered them guidance. This includes American leadership as well. Just recognize that, like, this is the reason. It's not for no reason, and it's certainly not because of anti-Semitism, okay?
Families killed. Israel's war in Gaza has been filled with horrors that are hard to fathom. Israel accused of deliberately blocking aid, even as a humanitarian crisis deepens. Today, it led to arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, being issued by the International Criminal Court for their alleged role in the suffering. Judges ruled there are reasonable grounds to believe they are responsible for the war crime of starvation, as well as the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution and other inhumane acts, and of intentionally directing an attack against the civilian population. The court also issued a warrant for Hamas's military commander, Mohammed Deif, though he's believed to be dead, accusing him of crimes against humanity as part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Israel on October the 7th.
Another thing that we were talking about, by the way, I like that Vorlo just said, remember the standing ovation in Congress when he was speaking? Yeah, I do remember. And also so does the world, and so does Channel 4, because they're literally presenting it. Remember these fucking demons, okay? Remember what these fucking demons did. Never let them forget it, okay? I certainly have not forgotten.
It's the arrest warrants for Israeli politicians that are unprecedented. Netanyahu becoming the first leader of a Western-style democracy to be accused by the court. Here he was in Washington just a few months ago, given a rapturous welcome by Congress.
America and Israel must stand together.
Look at that. Look at these fucking animals, dude. Oh, gross. Barbaric monsters. But hey, they wear suits, so, you know, they're elite. They're above it all. Demons, all of them. If there was any sort of real justice in this world, every single person that gave a standing ovation and gave real cover to Benjamin Netanyahu, the war criminal, would also stand trial. Of course, that will not happen, but, you know, that doesn't change the reality. It doesn't change the horror. It doesn't change the reality. It doesn't change their involvement.
Today, he dismissed the charges as absurd, biased and anti-Semitic. But public statements made by the men themselves form part of the evidence against them. At the start of the war, Gallant said food, water and fuel would all be blocked from entering Gaza.
Has the ADL called the ICC anti-Semitic yet? The Apartheid Defense League? I'm certain that they have already. This is their opportunity to shine, you know?
In the face of international pressure, aid has been allowed in, but nowhere near enough. Today in Gaza, displaced Palestinians welcomed the charges, though many fear they'll have little impact.
We hope that the decision issued today will serve the Palestinians and serve us here in particular in Gaza, and that it will not be like other decisions that have passed unnoticed.
Will Netanyahu and Gallant ever face the judges at the ICC? Everyone knows it's unlikely. The court has no police force to arrest anyone. But trips like this to London before the war will now be much more difficult. Many of Israel's allies are members of the ICC and are now obliged to detain the men if they enter the country, though America is not and has rejected the warrants. In Israel, where focus remains on the hostages still held captive by Hamas, even staunch critics of Netanyahu spoke out in his defense.
Oh, staunch critics of Netanyahu. Get the fuck out of here. Then you're not. You're not a staunch critic of Netanyahu. You're just not. If you're defending him in this moment, then you're not a critic of Netanyahu at all. You love him. You just, much like our liberals, want to have the fucking moral high ground. He does all of your wishes, but then you still get the chirp. Speaking of the ADL, 49 likes on this. Damn. The International Criminal Court's arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Gallant is a shameful and wholly political action on the part of the court. The ICC's rationale is rooted in the unsubstantiated and specious claims which run counter to the realities of the ground in Gaza and send a disturbing message equating Israel's war of self-defense with Hamas's terrorism. The court has ignored its own principles and practices in service of a political ruling. The court's moral lapse only serves to further embolden extremists and incite violence against Jews in Israel. We urge global leaders to unequivocally reject the ICC's wrong and dangerous decision. Remember when I said they got no motion? This is what I mean. All they can do is fucking chirp. Yeah, the only motion they got is when they're fucking complaining that some content creators said Sabra hummus is shitty. The grossest anti-Semitic crime of all.
It means that we as Jews and the state of Israel has no right to defend themselves against all these attacks and evil things that are being done against us, and they are defending us.
Would we provide the same cover for other American allies, or is this an only Israel thing? No, we would provide the same cover for America's allies. I mean, depending on if they're still within the framework of allegiance. Like, we've cast aside former fascists in the past, using them and then just like throwing them into the wind. But if some shit like this happened to Saudi Arabia, I think America would defend them. I think America would defend NATO nation Turkey as well.
Against that.
Even if support around Netanyahu is rallying now, some say the arrest warrant will damage him politically.
I think there will be a shift from defending what they say, the Prime Minister, what he represents as the most powerful position in Israel politics, into a little bit of soul-searching about how Israel got to this point.
Israel's assault on Gaza is continuing. In the north, tens of thousands of Palestinians have been forced to flee amidst fears they'll never be allowed to return. Overnight, dozens were killed in strikes across Gaza.
Children again, by the way. Israel... By the way, while we were having this conversation, Israel has been murdering children at a rapid clip in North Gaza. Just so you understand, like, the situation is still dire and only getting worse, especially in North Gaza. Israel has already revealed its ambitions of permanently occupying it through military force, and they're building roads to the former Israeli settlements that existed in the Gaza Strip already. So that's the other side of the story, obviously, that like, while this is a moment of happiness, okay, just remind yourselves, what the wrongdoings of Israel look like, okay, and how severe they are.
Here, the funerals of 3 children in the southern city of Khan Yunis. What impact, if any, will today's arrest warrant?
They're still killing people in southern Gaza as well.
Have on international efforts to finally reach a ceasefire.
Well, earlier I spoke to Jeffrey Robertson, Casey, a leading human rights lawyer who has been a UN war crimes judge. I began by asking how historic these arrest warrants are.
Well, we've had Kenyan leaders issued with warrants.
Remember Karim Khan famously saying that he had a conversation with an American congressperson who directly told him the ICC's jurisdiction is not for Western leaders. The ICC is there so you arrest African warlords and thugs like Putin. It's not. You're not supposed to get our guys. It was Lindsey Graham most likely.
Turned up. They were given bail, and they fought the case through lawyers. It never got to trial. But so there are precedents. But never perhaps a leader that is so blindly backed by America, which is not a member of the court, but will bring pressure upon it. And we just hope that the judges are independent enough, and they've shown independence by issuing this arrest warrant today.
What the Israelis will say, I'm sure, and they have an answer for themselves, obviously, is that the civilians who died in the Gaza Strip, and they would obviously dispute the numbers of civilians that have been killed, died either because they were used as human shields by Hamas or because they were, they got in the way. It was an unfortunate so-called collateral damage of the conflict, that dreadful term. But that they did not go out of their way to target these individuals.
Well, the prosecutor will say damage is not collateral if it's directly aimed. And so that's the answer to that.
What's the procedure now for the ICC?
The procedure is that the case goes to the next stage, and Mr. Khan, or whoever it is, will seek an indictment. Mr. Netanyahu can, I think he'd be allowed to send lawyers to the court to oppose that, although it's not necessary. The important thing to remember is that the ICC does not have the power to try him in absentia, no matter how strong the evidence.
So you need to actually arrest him in order to put him on trial, put him in the dock.
They need to put him in the dock.
Now, is that going to be likely?
First of all, Netanyahu himself may stay away. The downside for that is there are 124 countries signed up to the ICC, so he won't be able to travel very far.
But enforcement is voluntary, isn't it? So a country could choose not to arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu without warrant.
They'd have to leave the ICC. South Africa tried this with the head of Sudan, who was indicted, and the court ruled that it couldn't. So this is one of its
So what's the
obligations.
sanction? The sanction is to expel that country from the ICC?
Yes, which most countries don't want to be expelled. They will.
Is America leaving the ICC? America's never been a part of it.
Will do what was done with Putin in that other conference last year.
Why did it take the ICC this long? Brother or sister or MB? The former ICC prosecutor that actually launched a case against Israel for apartheid and other war crimes literally was endlessly harassed by Mossad and actively surveilled. Her phones were tapped. And Benjamin Netanyahu went to the United States of America and got Donald Trump to issue direct sanctions on her. And in the process of Karim Khan opening up that or continuing along with the investigation of the former ICC prosecutor Ben Souda, they literally never stopped threatening him. They have been threatening him nonstop. They probably threatened the judges too. So like I said, the well of depravity is deep, okay? You can't get away with criticizing Israel, especially from an international organ of justice, okay? You can't do that. That's not allowed. Not allowed. And for the record, when you go, I don't really understand. Why did it take so long? I mean, dude, look at what the American leadership is saying currently about the warrants, that they sent multiple letters with the congressional letterhead saying, if the ICC takes this decision and actually files the warrants for arresting Benjamin Netanyahu, we will literally take military action. They have said that they're going to take military action. It is in the law. It is in the law. It is in the books. We have a law called the Hague Invasion Act, known colloquially as the Hague Invasion Act, since I believe 2002, if I'm not mistaken, where if any American ally or any American service member is ever prosecuted by the ICC, America will invade the Hague. They will invade the Netherlands. It is a overt declaration of war. Now, you might be wondering, like, well, 2002, that's a weird time to write a law like that and put it in the books. I wonder why. There is a law that we passed in Congress that dictates that if an American citizen, if any kind of American service member, active duty, or vice versa, is ever brought up to the International Criminal Court, if they're extradited to the International Criminal Court, the U.S. Hague Invasion Act will kick in. You heard that right. We will invade the Hague. This is another one of there's a couple things that I talk about that like basically break people's brains. This is another one of them. When I talk about 32 states making it illegal to criticize Israel and still retain a job, everyone's like, what? That seems insane. Another one is obviously the massive amounts of money that the Defense Department cannot account for in the trillions. That also always breaks people's brains. And this is the last one. Whenever people say, America bad, Hasan, exactly how? I tell them, we have a law in the books after our war on terror started, post 9/11, that because we knew we were going to do an unimaginable metric ton of fucking war crimes. If the ICC ever decided to, you know, do its job and play its role and actively try and prosecute any war criminals that are of American descent or working at the behest of the United States of America, that we will fucking invade them. That's not good guy shit. That's bad guy shit. I'm sorry. U.S. President George Bush today signed into law the American Service Members Protection Act. That's what that's what it was called, which is intended to intimidate countries that ratify the treaty for the International Criminal Court. The new law authorizes the use of military force to liberate any American or citizen of a U.S. allied country being held by the court, which is located in The Hague. This provision, dubbed the Hague Invasion Clause, has a strong reaction from U.S. allies around the world, particularly in the Netherlands. This is real. This is still in action. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you can't really prosecute American war crimes in the International Criminal Court. Oh, this was pretty funny too. Of course, this pairs along nicely with this. Pentagon blocks sharing evidence of possible Russian war crimes with the Hague Court. I wonder why. Perhaps because it would set a bad precedent. And then lastly, International Criminal Court officials sanctioned by the United States. This was back in the 2nd of September 2020. The U.S. court has imposed sanctions on senior officials in the International Criminal Court, including Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accused the court of illegitimate attempts to subject Americans to his jurisdiction. How wonderful that this related Iraq amputee, I can hug my son with my feet. Related to this, okay? All of this is somehow related to one another, I suspect. I haven't even read the article, but, you know, wonder how that happened to that guy. But yeah, the U.S. has criticized the court since its foundation and is one of a dozen states which have not signed up. Balkis Jarrah, a senior counsel of the non-governmental organization Human Rights Watch, condemned the sanctions as a shameful new low for U.S. commitments to justice for victims of the worst crimes. Once again, the Geneva Suggestion, not the Geneva Convention, or any matter of international law is merely just a weapon against America's foreign adversaries. That's it. That is it. There are no... Damn, bro. People say, HasanAbi, you've changed. It's like, motherfucker, I haven't changed. You did, bitch. There's literally, go back in time and listen to me talk about any number of different things that America has done to serve its own capital interests. I have always been a long-standing critic of American imperialism, Western chauvinism, American exceptionalism. That's why it's so funny when motherfuckers are like, bro, you've changed, dude. No, I have not changed. You watched a couple fucking drama pervert videos, and because you were hopped up on American exceptionalist fumes to begin with, and that's an understandable starting position for you, and you refused to interrogate how you arrived at these positions, and possibly out of fear that, you know, a Chinese century of dominance would be terrifying, okay, decided to lean into American exceptionalism and Western chauvinism and American imperialism being a force for good. That's it. That's it. Yeah, the only thing that changed from back then is I'm no longer wearing Teddy Fresh shit. No rules for America. Only rules for who America has declared their enemies. I don't think people understand. People who are excited at the prospect of like Donald Trump getting crippled by a heart attack or dying or some shit, don't realize that means is President J.D. Vance, which is horrific, okay? I mean, Trump is also horrific. President J.D. Vance will be equally horrific, if not worse, because that means now you have a competent fascist that is directly aligned. Like Peter Thiel owns the country now. Do you understand? It's basically President Peter Thiel. We are so fucking cooked. Oh my God, we are so fucking cooked.
Well, joining me now is the Israeli diplomat and journalist Alan Pinkers. He's also served as an advisor to two former prime ministers, Ehud Barak and Shimon Peres. Alan Pinkers, good to speak to you again. What do you make of this arrest warrant then against Mr. Netanyahu and the former defense minister, Yoav Gallant?
Well, good to be with you, Matt. It was predictable. It was anticipated. It was expected.
It was fantastic.
The chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, requested...
It was also fantastic. Incredible stuff.
The warrants from the court in May. So that's 6 months ago. And it took time, but here we are. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, it did not come as a surprise. On the other hand, you see by Israel's vociferous reaction that this hit quite an exposed nerve. You put into this blender of Israeli responses anti-Semitism, and the Holocaust and an international conspiracy and a cabal and terrorism and Iran, and you blend and everyone drinks out of the same concoction, and everyone comes out with basically the same righteous indignation. On the other hand, I just listened very carefully to the very...
He didn't say kebab. He said cabal.
Interesting interview you conducted with Jeffrey Robertson. He makes very, very important points. Mr. Netanyahu cannot be tried in absentia. He knows that.
Yeah.
He will not test this. But then again, he A, is a fugitive. B, as you said correctly, Matt, his world shrunk considerably.
Right. I mean, does Israel itself, and I know that Netanyahu has been incredibly unpopular, with lots of people for lots of other reasons, but the war itself has, as far as I can understand, been supported by the Israeli.
Yeah, it's funny that defenders of Israel or people who want to even talk about Israel in positive terms will so quickly just use the most classic anti-Semitic tropes, but against Israel's enemies. Yeah, Iran, the Iranian cabal taking over the world. The Iranian Illuminati are controlling the purse strings of society. Iran controls the media and all of the international organs of justice.
Public.
Iran owns all the banks.
Israel itself now feel as a pariah because its democratically elected leader has been issued with this arrest warrant?
Well, that's a complex question. Let me explain why. What's complex about it? On the one hand, people disapprove of Netanyahu. They see him as responsible and believe he should be held accountable for the calamity of October 7th. Yes, they were pro the war. No, they do not truly realize and understand what Israel did in Gaza. Some do and don't care. Some choose not to know, and some just don't know.
Right.
Now, you have to understand the Israeli mindset, because there's a symbolic dimension to this and a practical dimension. The practical, I think, was covered way better than I can possibly do by Jeffrey Robertson in terms of the legality or the legal issues. But there's a symbolism here. Here's an Israel that believes it's on the moral high ground, that believes it has the most moral military in the world, that believes it is defending itself.
Right.
That you have to understand, the military, the Israeli military, is not some professional army. It's everyone.
Okay.
It's the people's.
But do you?
So people feel bad.
Right. But do you personally agree with the government in Tel Aviv that has said this is an anti-Semitic act? This arrest warrant is anti-Semitic.
No, I do not.
I mean, that is clearly what they're trying to do here.
Well, they're doing two things, Matt. First of all, Mr. Netanyahu, who suffers from a long time Louis XIV syndrome, identifying the state with himself and himself with the state, turns this into everyone's problem. We are being attacked by anti-Semites. We are the victims of a global conspiracy centered in the Hague, blah blah, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
The second thing is that look,
it's Mike from Pennsylvania, aka Central Committee, is right. This is a bad day for pieces of shit. A real bad day. All the way from those who are conducting genocide down to fucking Twitch streamers, okay? And maybe even kick streamers, as a matter of fact. It's crazy how tides turn so fucking fast.
The prime minister of my country is accused of war crimes. There's no question in my mind that he will not stand up trial.
But just briefly, sorry to interrupt you because we've slightly run out of time, Alan. Just one final one, briefly.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible, as Jeffrey Robertson has suggested, that actually maybe the Israelis themselves might arrest him and hand him over to the ICC?
No.
Or is that never going to happen?
No, no, for a very practical reason. If the prime minister of your country is accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, as is the defense minister, it inevitably entails that about 200 other brigadier generals, major generals, lieutenant generals, and even colonels will be accused of similar crimes.
Right.
No, I don't think that will happen.
Alan, we've run out of time. Alan Pinkers, thank you very much.
One can only imagine.
Much need for joining us on such a complex issue.
Matt.
Thank you.